Ohio State and Texas. Ohio State is about a 6-point favorite. This game will be played in Dallas, Texas. But Buckeyes are everywhere. Even the other Jack lives in Dallas. So if you think that Texas, because it's just 3 hours from Austin, is going to have this massive advantage in the stands, think again. Buckeye fans will be there, and they will be well represented. Like I said, about a 6-point favorite for Ohio State at this point. Who can blame them with how they've performed throughout the course of the last 2 games? This game will be 7:30 Eastern time on Friday. Looking forward to seeing it, that's for sure. We'll start with Ohio State. They're the favorite. They are currently sitting there in a position where no one's playing better football than them. If you look at how they've played since that loss to Michigan, tell me who's looked more complete. Tell me who's looked more dominant. Another thing, too, things have been pretty good for Ohio State at AT&T Stadium. That stadium was built in 2009. They are 3-1 all time, which includes the national championship that they won in 2015. That's the 2014 season, 2015 year. That was over Oregon. They also beat SC in the 17 Cotton Bowl. They beat TCU in a 2015 regular season game. And then last year, they lost to Missouri in the season ender. That was against, like I said, Missouri in the Cotton Bowl last year. How did Ohio State get here? Okay. They, of course, cruised to a 41-21 win against Oregon. They were up 34-0 in the blink of an eye, and it was the largest lead by any team against an AP number 1 team since Alabama over Notre Dame in the 2013 BCS National Championship game. So we have not seen a number 1 team that got into that much of a hole in more than a decade. Ohio State just did it against a team that was unblemished throughout the regular season and was really, really good in the process. So just goes to show you how historically great that performance and that start was for the Buckeyes last time around. We'll go with next to Texas. Their 23rd appearance in the Cotton Bowl. They're 11-10-1. They have the most Cotton Bowl appearances of any team. Their 11 wins are more than double the next closest team, which is, I think, is pretty amazing. Bama, A&M, and Notre Dame each have 5 Cotton Bowl victories. Texas has 11. Now, how did Texas get here? They were up by as many as 16 points in the fourth quarter, and the Sun Devils stormed all the way back, forced overtime. Texas had a chance to win it in regulation, not once, but twice, but Bert Auburn misses 2 go-ahead field goals there in the fourth quarter. Now, Texas goes into overtime. They survive. They win at 39-31. I would say it was a classic. I think that's a fair word to use in what was the 4th college football playoff game to go to overtime, just the 2nd to go to multiple overtimes. That was the 2018 Rose Bowl between Georgia and Oklahoma that also went to double overtime. So should be an awesome game. Can't wait to see it. Let's see what's going to determine who wins it, huh? Let's go to question number 1. Can Ohio State start fast again? I referenced a moment ago just how ridiculous that start was. Now, what's amazing about what Ohio State has done in the last couple weeks is that if you look at their first quarter performance, really this season has been, for the most part, decent, okay? Usually they start pretty strong in the passing game. They lead the country in first quarter completion percentage. They rank in the top 10 in yards per attempt and QBR. So that was just season long. But if you look at what they've accomplished just in the first quarter of the 2 college football playoff games that they've played in, it takes it to a whole new level. They had 205 yards in the first quarter against Tennessee. They thought, you know what, that's pretty good. That's our best performance in more than a calendar year. They had 210 against Indiana in 2022, and that was the Indiana team before Curt Cignetti got there. So 210 against Indiana. Yeah, that was a 3-9 football team. No surprise. 205 against Tennessee. All right, fine. They took advantage of maybe a slightly overrated Tennessee team, perhaps. And then you go and you play against a team that is 12-0 and is really dominated the vast majority of the season. And they go on to put up 233 first quarter yards, including 212 through the air. So pretty ridiculous to break their own record in consecutive weeks, and to do so against the AP number 1 ranked team makes it all the more ridiculous. Can they start that fast again? Because if they can, look out. Because if you're playing from behind against this group, you're in for a very, very long day. Question number 2. Can Texas effectively run the football? Like Trey Wisner, Jaden Blue, we know what this team is all about. We know what this scheme evolved into. They're a group that wants to be balanced. I know we spend so much time talking about the weapons. We spend so much time talking about the quarterback play, Quinn Ewers, the offensive line, the defensive front, the quarters, coverage that they'll play. It's really coming down to, can they run the football? And the 2 games that they didn't run the ball very well, it did not end well for them. Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue, they're going to have to get theirs. They're going to have to get touches. They're going to have to manufacture opportunities to have maybe extended handoffs. It might go down in the box score as a reception, but it's no different than a toss sweep. Because if you think you're just going to run it right up the gut against Ohio State, I think you got another thing coming. This defense has been too good in the front 7. They're too stout. They're too physical to anticipate Texas's offensive line just flat out moving them off the football. It's not going to happen. They're going to have to get by with a little bit of misdirection. They're going to have to utilize a few smoke and mirrors to create some seams in the run game, but they have to stay committed to it, because if you become one-dimensional against this Ohio State team, that is a recipe for disaster. Question number 3, can Will Howard stay hot? Now, outside the performance against Michigan, when he just wasn't seeing the field, he really hasn't had a lot of situations in which he's been putting the ball in harm's way. Yeah, I know he had an interception against Tennessee, but if you watch that play, it should have been defensive pass interference because the ball was perfectly thrown. It was right on the face mask. It could not have been better. Now, the Penn State game, he had a fumble over the pylon, sure, but outside of that, he's been super smart with the football. He's also been incredible on downfield throws. He's 3rd in completion percentage right now on downfield throws. And against Tennessee, he had one of the best games of his career on throws that traveled 15 or more yards downfield. He was 7 of 8 on throws that traveled 15 or more. That's the most completions and the best completion percentage he's ever had on throws in the game like that. Okay, 98.8 total QBR, really amazing. Okay, so we know that it picked up right where it left off because he got even more accurate. He didn't have a ball hit the ground on 20-plus yard throws against Oregon. And we're not talking about like guys right wide open, guy slows down, just get it to him, allow him to catch it. No, we're talking pinpoint accuracy where the receiver doesn't break stride. And if it is well covered, it doesn't matter. Because when the ball is placed that perfectly, the defender can't be right. Very difficult spot to be in if you're a defender playing against a quarterback that's this hot and this confident. So can Will Howard's success continue? One would assume it likely will. Question number 4, can Quinn Ewers pick up where he left off? Now, remember, his career started at Ohio State. This will be the first time a starting quarterback faces his former school in a college football playoff game. But if you look at his performance against Arizona State, it was okay. Started the game with a bang, had a couple of big plays early on, and then kind of went into a little bit of a lull. And then in the 4th quarter and overtime, he kind of awoken. All right. In the 4th quarter, he threw for 197 yards. That's the 2nd highest total in his career. The most he actually had was against Washington last year in the semifinal. He also accounted for 3 touchdowns, including 1 rushing. He did have an interception on what I think was a bad decision. He got overly aggressive, threw a ball that was a little bit too much air under it, and allowed a defender to go and make a play on it. So it was not a flawless 4th quarter, but I do think at the end of the game, had he not played as well as he'd played, Texas probably not in this position to play Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. He played really well down the stretch and gave them plenty of opportunities, not just to win the game in regulation, but to secure it in overtime as well. Question number 5, how will Texas handle Jeremiah Smith? This might be the biggest question of the game, especially taking into account how good Jeremiah Smith has gotten and how good this passing attack has become. Now, Jeremiah Smith is 6'3", 215 pounds. He's likely going to be going against on multiple different occasions. It's not going to be all the time because Texas is not a team that just lines up in man coverage and says, you got him, you got him, you got him, you got him. But we could have one of the better matchups on the perimeter that we'll have all bowl season. That's Jeremiah Smith against Jahdae Barron, who's 5'11", 200. He won the Thorpe Award and has always seemingly stepped up and made a play for Texas when it had to be made. Here's the tough thing about Jeremiah Smith, though, is that he is not a stationary target. They've now started to find some success moving him around. Against Tennessee, for example, he played 15 snaps in the slot. He played a few more snaps in the slot against Oregon. They can move him around. They can put him in the slot. They can motion guys inside and out. So he's going to get some favorable matchups, and it's going to be tough to find him, and you better locate him every single time because he's fresh off a season high and career high 187 yards and 2 touchdowns against Oregon. So he can take over the game, has proven that, and could very easily do it again if you can find some favorable matchups for him in the passing game. Question 6, can the improved Buckeye offensive line handle the Texas defensive front? Now, here's a part of the game that I don't think is being talked about enough. Now, Ohio State, everyone acknowledges this. The coaches acknowledge this. The fans acknowledge this. It is what it is. They got their tail kicked against Michigan, right? Like the offensive line got pushed around, did not play well up front along either line of scrimmage. They were just okay against Oregon. Now you look at the numbers and you look at the performance and you look at the stats and you look at the dominance. You sit there and think, well, the protection must have been good. Oh, well, the offensive line must have played great. That wasn't really the case. The offensive line was okay. They were fine. They just weren't great. The ball was getting out so quickly that it didn't matter. Now, against Tennessee, I thought they were at their best. Now, part of what helped this offensive line is that Chip Kelly, he moved the pocket, he rolled the quarterback out, he changed the launch point, so those pass rushers, they didn't always know exactly where to go. So he kept them guessing and kept them a little bit off balance with how they adjusted things within their protections. But I think this might be the deepest group that Ohio State has faced this year. Now, I don't know if the starters across the board are quite as good as the talent that Michigan has. I mean, Michigan's got a couple guys that are just flat out ridiculous, but Michigan lacks the depth that Texas has. I do think Ohio State, like I said, can neutralize this matchup a little bit if the ball continues to come out really quickly and if they can mix in some run and they can avoid obvious passing rushing situations. But this is a very deep and disruptive group. On the interior, you got Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, a handful of other guys that are built to stop the run, guys that are built to stop the pass. They are very deep and they are very versatile along the front on the interior. It's the edges, though, that can be very challenging when playing against this Texas team. Colin Simmons, it's not often when he's the second best freshman on the field. Of course, the best being Jeremiah Smith, but Colin Simmons will be right there. He can take over the game off the edge. Trey Moore, also very twitchy off the edge as well. And then Barron Sorrell, who's got not just some twitch, but he can go speed to power. It can make life difficult on these tackles as well. So can the Buckeye offensive line handle what I think is one of the best defensive lines in college football? Question number 7, can Texas's offensive line handle the pressure that they're going to get from Ohio State's defensive front? Now, Texas's offensive line's been banged up the last couple of weeks. Their right tackle, Cameron Williams, he's got a knee sprain, missed the Arizona State game. Trevor Gooseby started in his place. Gooseby actually played extended minutes on the left side when Kelvin Banks, the left tackle, got banged up against Texas A&M. Long story short, this offensive line has had some challenges. Guys have been a little banged up from time to time. And now you're going to try to find yourself against a defensive front in Ohio State that has taken it to the next level. It's been honest, and I think I've been pretty fair in documenting that this Ohio State defensive line, they have always been a group that could evoke some fear, but the production was not always as good as what I thought it could be. Like, I've always watched them, and I always came away from watching Ohio State for a long time thinking, man, I just wish I got a little bit more from that group. That has not been the case the last couple of weeks. I feel like we are finally seeing a group that is reaching its potential, and that's really exciting if you're a fan of college football and have followed them for the last few years. And then finally, question number 8, can Ohio State's rushing attack continue to create balance? Now, Ohio State, I know a lot's been made of Will Howard's progress, the passing game's progress, still a team that wants to pound you, still a team that wants to create opportunities in the run game. Chip Kelly does the best job, or among the best jobs in the sport, at creating opportunities in the run game by marrying up parts of his scheme to the passing attack, taking advantage of tendency breakers, finding ways to split the defense in half. He does an amazing job. There's a reason why they have 12 touchdowns in the last 6 games. The one game they didn't find the end zone on the ground, that was against Michigan. So you know TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins are going to get theirs. They're going to get opportunities. It's just, can Texas stop the run without contributing more defenders into the box defensively? Because that's where Chip Kelly and company will get you. They want you to bring that safety down because now they have one-on-ones on the outside with their outstanding wide receivers. But if they can stop the run by keeping their 2 safeties back, that will go a long way in helping Texas defend the whole field, which is what Chip Kelly is ultimately going to force you to do. As far as picks in this game, it's going to be tough. I think this game could go down to the wire. I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring than people realize. I think both defenses will play better than people realize, but I'm taking Ohio State. However, I don't think Ohio State runs them out of the gym. I think this one comes down to the wire. And if you're thinking about it from that perspective, probably take the points. I think Texas is being a little undervalued. And I think everybody and their brother seems to think that Ohio State is just going to run away with this thing. I think they'll win it. I think it'll be a tight one there in Dallas.